Hi, Catalina here. Today's December 6th. I have some student loan updates. I am reporting to you here on my front porch. So if you hear some background noise, it's because I am outside today. It's lovely weather here. I'm actually in Florida. So unlike I know a lot of places up north, where it may be colder. So I thought I'd enjoy the outside a bit here. Here's my microphone I'm holding so I can be heard more clearly. There is exciting news. In that we have a date set for when the Supreme Court will hear the case on the $10,000 to $20,000 of loan forgiveness. I want to share some of what the news is saying and whether I agree with it or not. Just from their commentary, and some of it, sometimes on these news outlets, I feel like the commentary is very much for people to click rather than reporting on valuable news. So I've read through a bunch of them, and the point of this is for me to aggregate that for you all. So this is what you should know and how this could potentially impact you as a borrower. Okay, that's the point of this. So first and foremost, it was announced, like I said, that the Supreme Court will hear the case in February of this coming year, 2023. That essentially means if they rule on it in the month of February, that essentially the legislation is such that within 60 days of a decision, student loans will be kicked in, which means they make a decision sometime in February. Then we're talking about April. Student loans are kicked in rather than June 30th. So I want to put that out there first. That's what that means. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what the media is saying, like the projected ruling will be. The media is talking about the projected ruling being that they think the Supreme Court will rule against it just based on how they've ruled on like Roe versus Wade, as well as the gun control legislation that went through Congress, that went through the Supreme Court, excuse me. So first and foremost, they think the projection in the media is saying that there's been other pandemic relief efforts such as PPP loans, but that the PPP loans were made by the passing of PPP loan efforts was an act that Congress approved, and it was not an executive action. And that's the difference between PPP versus student loan forgiveness. Okay, so essentially there's like from my reading and my understanding of how our political system and rulemaking works is that the Supreme Court could come back and strike it down and saying it needs to be ruled legislative ruling just like the PPP, or they can deem it unconstitutional for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure. You know, there would have to be there'd be some legal findings as to why they would declare it unconstitutional. But most likely, I don't think that they're just going to declare it unconstitutional. Maybe they would, because, I mean, I was shocked by Roe versus Wade myself. But I do think the more likely scenario would be that they would say it's required to be legislated within the House of Representatives and the Senate. That's what I think is more likely to happen, because, I mean, it's very similar to the whole PPP program, and I understood that went through the Senate. And in reading all this news, I had no idea that the PPP program has, like, forgiven already a significant amount of debt that people took out in the PPP program. So there is some form of debt forgiveness through the Payroll Protection Act. That's what it is. And so it is possible that Congress can legislate against debt and consumer debt forgiveness. So it's possible that the Supreme Court may say, hey, it has to be legislative rather than directly declaring it unconstitutional. Roe versus Wade wasn't declaring abortion unconstitutional. It was saying that it needs to be decided at the state level. So this could be similar. They could say forgiving debt isn't unconstitutional, but it needs to be decided via a legislative body, right? The legislative body being the House and the Senate. That's what I think is actually more likely to happen, in which case rule and lawmakers will have to decide, is this a publicly popular thing to do? And we can see right now from polls that the majority of Americans, just like majority of Americans are for the woman's right to choose. And I don't mean to turn this political or to show my political leanings here, but I do want to say that the Supreme Court has acted in ways that have not been popular by public opinion. Like Roe versus Wade, as well as the right to choose, by the majority of American opinion, is that the woman should have the right to choose. The majority of by poll of popular opinion, public opinion, excuse me, not popular opinion, is that even on the Republican side, even Republicans favor some form of debt forgiveness. It's not like it's just, oh, all Republicans are against the student loan forgiveness here, right? So we will see what ends up getting legislated, but of course, this Supreme Court could really surprise us, you know. So we will see about that. I wanted to also mention that if you happen to work for a big employer that provides generous benefits, also know that you could go to HR and request that they provide a student loan repayment benefit. And the reason I wanted to say this is because in 2018, there was legislation passed by a private ruling letter that employers can even use like 401k matches to potentially match student loan payments. So the reason I bring this up is not because LoanSense is an employee benefits platform by any means, but that regardless of the ruling of the Supreme Court, if you work for a large employer that provides generous 401k, you could just go and request to HR. I mean, they're shopping for benefits on an annual basis, right? Request to get student loan repayment as a benefit, right? Request, because let's say student loan forgiveness isn't passed. Well, if you work for an employer, maybe you can make up for the loss of federal relief through potentially getting your employer to cover some form of forgiveness. Also, a lot of employers provide tuition assistance. If you want to go back and get a degree, maybe their tuition assistance program could be helpful to you. So I bring up alternative ideas on what this could potentially mean to you. It could potentially mean we don't have the 10 to 20K of forgiveness unless it's legislated, in which case I'm trying to help you creatively brainstorm ways you could also get it as a benefit through your employer. Additionally, I do want to remind you that it does not mean that there is no form of forgiveness or no program out here already. There's income-driven repayment. And of course, if you're a public servant, public service loan forgiveness. And these are programs that have already been legislated and already been passed and have not been challenged. And so if you can reduce your payment based on your income amount and over time get it forgiven, you can do that as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there as potential alternatives and provide this brief news update. There's tons of news articles going out that Supreme Court will strike it down, all this. There's no way we absolutely know the answer. But I do want to say, let's hang tight till February. We'll see what happens. The news is out that they will legislate on February. Regardless of the news, just a reminder is that the Biden administration is going to kick us back into repayment 60 days after it's legislated on. So regardless of what the answer is, I would say at this point it looks like an April timeline to be kicked back into repayment. To enjoy the holidays and the remaining of time we're not paying. But if you have any questions of if you should pay, what you should be doing, last week's video I will link below. I went over scenarios in which you should consider paying, as well as, I've been keeping you all updated and I will continue to do so. Do not be selfish with this news. Please pass it on to those that it may benefit. As well as like this channel if you like it. And if you are a student loan borrower and could benefit from these updates, please consider subscribing. Have a great rest of your week.